welcome to the Wedding Chaplain podcast. My name is David Anderson, and thank you so much for joining us today. And we're very excited. We are actually in studio. We're at the Pod Populi Studios in Hudson, Ohio. And I just feel like so grown up. We have been doing this really out of my office, and now we have grown up to actually take this podcast into studio. And so we're very thankful for the folks at Pod Populi to help us take this podcast one more step further. And so thank you for joining us. So they are one of our sponsors and partners. One of our other partners is eWed Wedding Insurance. And so we'll talk about them a little bit more, but just excited to get the year started. And thank you again for joining us. If this is your first time listening into the Wedding Chaplain podcast, the Wedding Chaplain podcast is primarily for engaged couples. It's for those that are looking forward to getting married in the next year or so. You may have actually just gotten a proposal over Christmas, and now you're entering into the year. We're recording this in January of 2023, and you might have just starting to get in the process of figuring out venues and all that stuff. And whether you are 6 months away, whether you are a year away, whether you're just a few weeks away, we want to be able to help you, give you some information, help that transition go a little bit smoother. But we also talk to couples who are already married, from newlyweds to those that are celebrating multiple decades together. What we're trying to take is some of the wisdom from those couples and the wisdom of relationships and translate that into a format that we can speak into the lives of those that are getting ready to get married. If there's any information that you need, you can visit us at our website. That is the hub. It is weddingchaplain.com. Weddingchaplain.com. You can find our blog. You can find our resources. If you would like one of our ministers to serve you at your wedding, if you need premarital counseling or marital counseling, you can come to that website. And of course, obviously, you can find the podcast there. So however you found it, if you didn't found it not at our website, you can come back to the website and look us up there. So today, we have been interviewing a number of folks over the last few episodes, and I wanted to take today and just talk a little bit. I want to go back through some material that I really haven't talked about in a long time. But wanted to begin this new year, 2023, or whenever you're listening to this, wanted to design this as a beginning discussion and really go through two of the main concepts that I like to talk to couples about. Usually I meet with couples anywhere between 2 and 6 times, depending on what kind of approach they want with their premarital counseling. But one of the very first things that we like to talk about is what do you need to be doing? What do you need to be doing in this season? It's a very unique season. The engagement season is not dating. It's not marriage. And so you're in this preparing mode. You're getting ready mode. And so there's some things that are distinct that we want you to start doing. There's some habits that we want you to start building. And today's topic is called the balancing act, because there's really two things that we want couples to do. And you can do one of them very well. You can do the other one very well. But if you only do one of them, you're going to find yourself out of balance. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go in. But one of the first things that we stress, and really one of the first conversations that I have with an engaged couple, and if you are one of our current clients, you have heard this, you've heard me say it, so I don't want to be just a repeat or anything like that, but you probably need to be reminded. If I told you this a couple of months ago, you probably need to hear it one more time. But for any couple, if you've gotten engaged, one of the first things that we do is we give every couple a homework assignment. And we start off by saying it's a lot of fun, but it is something that we want them to do from the moment they hear this to the time they get married. And it is called the date challenge, And, when a couple hears that, they're like, oh, well, that's not too hard. Or we already do that. But the challenge comes in is that dating is something that you did while you were dating. When you first started going out, you started building that relationship with that person. You started going out. That's really how this whole story got started. Once a couple, though, transitions, and this is where the research on this is fascinating. There's been tons of research been done, research books, seminars, all kinds of things have come out, and a number of them have all come up with the same conclusion, that couples that date stay together. Couples that date stay together. Now, that doesn't sound very revolutionary. In fact, you probably don't need a whole lot of research to tell you that. It's probably common sense. What the research also points to is once a couple gets to a sort of a permanent place in their relationship, once they get to they're living in the same house, they're engaged, or they're married, or a combination of any of those three, that the idea of dating fades away. The longer a couple is together, the less they actually go out. And it sort of sounds weird. You think, well, the longer I'm with you, the more time I want to spend with you. But the idea of dating actually fades away. And when we talk about dating, we talk about something this is a planned activity. It's not just, hey, what do you want to do tonight? I don't know. What do you want to do tonight? And they just sort of come up with it on the spur of the moment. But it's actually something that is planned. Now, unfortunately, what happened over COVID is that we were not helped very much by all of that. COVID, for many folks, produced something that was very interesting. It produced this idea that for many couples, they saw each other all the time, and we saw a number of things speed up during COVID. If a couple was going to get together and stay together, they decided that a lot faster. If a couple was going to break up, they decided that a lot faster. Part of it because they saw each other all day long. So, during 2020, there was nowhere to go. People were working from home, and that extended well into 2021. And as we're recording this in 2023, we feel like a lot of that is over. There's still some spots in the country that are still struggling. We obviously still have to be careful. But for the most part, that's over. But during that season, people found each other. They were just together all day long. But one of the things that I would always sort of remind couples is it does not matter that you spend all day together. That is not necessarily the goal. I often joke it is more like time served than spending time together. And that's not a phrase you want to use in any form in terms of a dating relationship. But, if you're with somebody, you see each other all the time. You see each other all the time. You see them in the morning. You see them in the evening. You see them all day long. You're doing chores during the day. You see each other all day long. And the illusion is, well, it's an endless date. It's an endless date. Okay? No, it doesn't really work like that. That I can actually spend time with my person all day long, but still get excited about the idea that we're going to go out later this evening or go out this weekend. So the date challenge that we put in front of people sort of addresses this, because there is, again, the illusion, just because we spend time together does not mean that we are on a date. So there are 4 rules to the date challenge. The first rule is this: you need to go on a date once a week. You need to go on a date once a week. Now, I've seen some other things out there that kind of talk about, well, you go at least once every 2 weeks, twice a month, and depending on your place in life, a lot of times young couples, especially if you're expecting children or they have small children, it is hard. I get some of the challenges, but for those who are engaged, you want to try to build this habit now. So once a week, you should go on a date once a week. The second rule, and this is a rule that only applies to the engaged couple. Now, the rule can change once you're married. So if you're listening as a married couple, you can change this rule. But for the engaged couple, the second rule that we always tell couples is no wedding talk. No wedding talk. And that's for a reason. One of the big traps of engagement is spending all of your engagement talking about the event. We stress to all of our couples that there's 2 things that we're doing. We're getting you ready for a wedding, we're also getting you ready for marriage. And those are not the same thing. One is a very big, expensive, very fun costume party, and the other one is the rest of your life. And the trap that a lot of times couples fall into is that they get engaged and immediately this machine starts churning. I mean, immediately they start downloading apps, and they got books and Excel spreadsheets, and they're talking to vendors, and unless you are a event coordinator, no one really plans on adding 10 to 15 to 20 hours of their week to the idea of wedding planning. But that stuff happens. You have to meet with all the vendors. You have to interview all the vendors. You have to go to all these different places and get information, make choices, figure out what your budget is, and all of that. And it takes a lot of time, and it continues to grow the closer you get to the wedding. Even though you feel like you've gotten things done, there's more to do. So I'll always hear couples, I'll ask them, hey, how much have you guys gotten done? Like, oh yeah, we got most of the big stuff done. And they'll list it off. And it's always amazing that still the farther they get, or the closer they get to their event, there's more stuff that has to be done. And so the rule is you need to have one conversation a week during the engagement season where you are not talking about the event. You're just not talking about this event. And now, if you're already married and you could look back on this season, hopefully fondly, you need a different rule. And it is whatever conversation you find yourselves getting trapped in all the time. If you guys are always talking about the kids, then you need a no kids conversation. If you're always talking about work, you need a no work conversation. If you're always talking about the bills or finances, or if you're building a house or buying a house or trying to sell a house, whatever you feel like is the dominant conversation that is taking all of your time and perhaps producing some stress, you need to get out of that conversation. So you need one conversation a week that has nothing to do with that. So if you were engaged, it's very clear, no wedding talk. No wedding talk, nothing. And you need to get like super serious about it. You know, to use a sports analogy, you need to throw a flag, blow a whistle, whatever. You need to call timeout. That is what date night's going to be for. No wedding talk. Again, if you're married, you can use whatever no you want to for that. The third rule that we'll put before couples is we want them to alternate who plans date night. Alternate who plans date night. And we do this for a few reasons. One, it's fun. Two, oftentimes, at least what I've found, is that the date night dies for a number of reasons. One, you get busy. Two, there's a budget and all that kind of stuff. Sometimes, no offense to the guys out here listening, no offense to the future grooms, but most guys, myself included, we only have like 3 good dates, and we've spent them by now. We've used them, and we spend the rest of our lives trying to recycle those dates, and we just keep using those sort of same ones, or we come up with something that I like to think about. Maybe there's something that was just given to us when we were like 18 in like a secret meeting where, we come up with this phrase, and the phrase goes like this. And perhaps you've heard this before or used this before, but the phrase is, I'll do whatever you want to do. I'll do whatever you want to do. And we think that works. All the guys think that works. And we think, oh, we're going to have a great time. I didn't think of anything. And then the girl is like, he didn't think of anything. So we like to say, okay, 1 week, it is the guy's job. It is the guy's job to come up with the date. The next week, it is the girl's job to come up with the date. And so we're going to flip-flop back and forth. And I've seen some couples get competitive about that. That's completely fine. If you want to have fun with it, like, your date, I'm totally going to beat you next week if you want to get competitive about it. Some couples like to even make the budget part of it. I mean, we don't want anyone to go bankrupt having a date night every week. It's not prom night every Friday. So maybe that's part of the challenge as well. Is like, hey, we're going to try to keep this under $20, $30 or whatnot. But the idea is basically you only have to plan 2 dates a month. You're alternating. The side thing, or at least the psychological hack that we're trying to do, is I'm trying to get some of your mind off of the event that is happening in 3, 4, 5, 6, 12 months. I'm trying to get you to focus on your relationship now. Okay. Forget the wedding that's coming up in the fall. I need to figure out what I'm doing for my person this weekend. And there's good stress in there. And I'm trying to just sort of steal some of that and trying to smuggle that in to the present relationship. But the fourth rule is we call this the ask the question, or the question rule. Ask the question. What exactly is the question? Well, the question is, will you go out with me? Will you go out with me? And that's a great question. That is a powerful, powerful question. We love to ask that question. We love to be asked that question. There's just a lot to it. Every romantic comedy, every romantic movie, every romantic story, there is somewhere in that story, this question comes up. It is an important idea. When is somebody going to ask the question? When is somebody going to ask the question? So it is something that we enjoy. We enjoy being asked. We enjoy asking. It has a lot of power to it. And it is something that you need to get in the process of asking. Now, we like to say, when we're talking to couples, is there's a word that we want couples to avoid. And it's a good word. It's a safe word, but it can also cause danger. And so the word is assume. Okay. And if you think about the word assume, think about it, but I want you to put an X through it, because what the word assume basically says was, well, if I'm going out Friday, I assume you're going out with me. And assume basically says I'm taking you for granted. I assume that you're going to go with me. And the key for a lot of relationships is we are in the re-up business. We are in the reaffirmation business that even though at a wedding, we're going to put rings on the fingers of the person that we love, it doesn't take very long before we have to reaffirm, I love you. I think you're wonderful. I think you're attractive and you're an awesome person and all those different things. And I won't say you have to necessarily do it every day, but you need to be in the business of it. You need to be in the reaffirmation business. And this question is a powerful thing, especially if you've had a hard week, if you've had a week where there's been conflict, or you've had a week where things have not gone very well. It's a wonderful thing to have somebody say again to you, even if I've been with you for years, to say, I still love you. I still want to be with you. And will you go out with me? And I always joke with the guys, especially if the guy's ever in trouble and their spouse or their fiance comes in and they ask them a question, they feel like, I did something wrong. I always tell the guy, hey, stop right there and ask her out. Hey, will you go out with me? And I always joke she'll forget about what's going on. That doesn't always work, but it's a good strategy to think, I should be in the business of thinking about when is the next time that I'm going to ask you out. And the idea is very simple. When you think back to the beginning of your relationship, that was exciting. You were talking to this person. There was some intrigue. There was interest. There was mystery. There was tension, all those different things. And it finally sort of reaches this crescendo where someone asks a question. Will you go out with me? What are you doing this weekend? Do you want to go get some coffee or whatever? And the story sort of builds up to that. And every time I'm talking to a couple, there's the story. There's two parts of the story. There's the ask the question story, and then there's the big ask, which is the proposal. So, hey, how did you two meet? How long did you talk? And eventually someone did something. Someone asked. I texted you a question. I found you after class. We talked after work, or we were on the phone one night. We were talking for hours, whatever. But somewhere in that process, there is that question. So that's the first part. That is the I guess the one side where we want to make sure that there is balance, that you are balanced, that you are doing the date night. Now, the second part, when we get into sort of the second conversation many times with couples, is we talk through the idea of conflict. Now, conflict it's not a fun discussion, especially when you start off with such a good thing like date night. Why do you need to switch to conflict? Because this is an important thing. Couples need to have a plan for conflict. And that sounds weird that we have a plan for conflict. First of all, conflict is not a bad thing. It's not. It is not a bad thing. It is the process of solving problems. It is the process for solving problems. You need to have a process for solving problems. Every good business, every good relationship, there is a process for solving problems. And you need to have one as a couple. You don't just stumble into this. You have to have a plan moving forward. How are you going to solve your problems? Now, also, every good story has conflict. Every good story, every good movie has conflict. Superhero movies, romantic comedies, whatever. There's always a conflict. There's something that has to be solved. If you had a superhero movie and there was no one for the superhero to fight, then you just watch the superhero fly around. It's kind of boring. There is a problem that needs to be solved. But every romantic comedy has this as well, is that you see this couple and they get together and of course they're attractive and all that, and there's energy there. You want to see them get together, but in essence, you still want to see them solve something. What is the problem? They gotta figure out they live across country. They come from different worlds. In every Hallmark movie, there is some kind of weird problem that involves the big city person and the small town person and all of that. Some of those are a little campy, a little cheesy, but at the heart of it, we want to see a couple solve their problems. And when you see a couple that is not healthy, one of the things that really stands out is they're usually in a situation where they're not able to solve their conflict. They just sort of keep having the same conflict over and over again. And that is a pattern. A lot of times, when we see couples who are in conflict, it's not original. They don't have one problem that they have this week and it was a different problem last week and it was a totally different problem 3 weeks ago. No, usually when a couple is sort of caught in a cycle, they are doing the same thing over and over and over again. So there's two problems with conflict. The first is this. We can't predict it. We can't predict it. Okay? No one knows. No one knows like, hey, we need to wrap up this meeting because I have a conflict with my loved one starting in about 2 hours. No one can predict it. No one can plan for it. And the other idea is that there's usually, every time there's a conflict, there's usually one person who's ready for it. It is, I love to hear couples when they sort of talk through and they say, oh, we're on the same page. I begin my sentences and he completes them. And that's a sort of a cute idea. But the reality is there is only one person. There is only one person who is thinking about what you're thinking about right now. And it's you. When I introduce that idea to the other person, and I will have this, I will hear this all the time, like, well, what were you thinking about? Were you thinking about this? I was like, no, I wasn't thinking about that. Well, why weren't you thinking about that? And it's sort of this weird mystery that we weren't thinking about the same things. And sort of disconcerting because we're in love. We should be this one unit thing. And that's what we do stress. We want you to become one. But the idea of conflict is confusing because we realize I'm the only person at this time thinking about it. Now, we both may think it's important. We both may think that it is something that needs to be addressed, but the only person who's thinking about it right now is you. And so inevitably what couples will sink into, they will sink into this thing called pursue and distance, or in a layman's terms, it is the idea of cat and mouse or sheriff and bad guy, that kind of thing, where there's one person who's chasing. There's one person who is in pursuit. There's another person who is in distance and they are running away. Okay. Hey, we need to talk about this thing. I don't want to talk about this thing. Well, we need to talk about this thing. Well, I don't want to talk about this thing. And they end up sort of chasing each other. And you'll see couples sometimes they'll go through this whole pursuit and distance thing and they'll do it for minute, 10, 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And you'll ask them and say, hey, what were you guys arguing about? And they think they were arguing about this topic. But in reality, what the argument was is I was just trying to pull this person into the discussion. Okay. Hey, we need to talk about your mom. I don't want to talk about my mom. Well, we really do need to talk about your mom. And she did this thing and this thing happened this weekend and I need to address it with you. And I don't know. I don't want to talk about it. And well, you never want to talk about your mom. And that thing could spiral for forever. And then you'll ask, like, what did you guys talk about? Well, we were talking about his mom. No, you really weren't. You were actually kind of just talking about your mom. And so the idea, really, you're sort of wasting time if you just stay in this sort of pursuit and distance cycle. And so one of the things that we try to introduce to couples it's I don't know that it's revolutionary, but it is something that is interesting that we want couples to schedule their conflict. We want couples to try to schedule their conflict. And that may sound weird, that may sound impossible, but the reality is what you're trying to do is you're trying to set up space for problem solving in your week. That there's a few phrases you can use. One is called the appointment. Okay. Now that does not sound attractive for a couple. I get that. That doesn't sound fun. There's another term we use called the business meeting. That does not sound, that even sounds worse, that I have to have a business meeting with my loved one. But the reality is that you are a business. But you do have tasks that you have to complete. There's things that you have to get done. And so you can check in with each other on Sunday to say, hey, what are the things we have to get done? But then the third one is topics. And I would say the first two, time and tasks, you can do that pretty quickly, especially if you have, if there's an app on your phone that you can sync your calendar. Some of that stuff can sort of manage itself. But the third one is topics. What are the things that we need to talk about? What are the things that we need to discuss? And you could say, oh, hey, this is the time where we need to talk about our finances, or we need to talk about intimacy, or we need to talk about our parents, or we need to talk about whatever the big topic is. And if it comes up on a Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, you can have the ability to say, hey, is this something we need to talk about right now? Or is this something that we can put off until Sunday? And that's sort of up to you. And you have some time to think about it. And one of the realities is if you both have time to think about it, but it is on the schedule, it defeats the pursue and distance dynamic. Pursue has a fear that we're never going to get to it, that the person I'm talking to, they're always going to avoid it. Distance is trying to avoid it. If I avoid it long enough, it's going to go away. And so if you have it set on the schedule, it satisfies both sides that we are only going to go, the farthest we can go is a week, and we're finally going to get to it. We're going to get to that point. And so the main idea that we want to sort of figure out is, okay, can you balance both of these? Can you have in your week, can you have a date night, and can you have this kind of business meeting? And the reality is if you're only doing one of those, you're probably in a very fun relationship right now. And that relationship's only going to last about 6 months because you're not going to be able to do anything serious. You're not going to be able to talk about anything serious or pressing. If you're only doing the business meeting, there are some couples that do very well. They get all their tasks done. They have the calendar straight. I mean, they've got it all nice and organized, but they've sort of lost the dating passion part of the relationship. And so you really do. You need to balance this thing out. You need to have both. You need to have a date night, and you need to have some kind of business meeting or some kind of planned approach to your conflict. Now, let me say very clearly, these are not the same night. These are not the same night. Do not go into business meeting while you're at Chili's eating the chips and salt. No. These are separate events where you are out. The date night is just for date night. It is spending time with you, talking to you, all of that. The business meeting is the kitchen table discussion. And you can obviously have the same boundaries. I mean, hey, we're by ourselves. There's no distractions, no devices. You sort of planned it and, you have each other's full attention in both, but you are not doing those on the same night. So the key for couples is making sure you do both of these. Now, if you don't do either one of those, my guess is you're in a bad place. Okay. You're not doing anything fun. You're not going out and you're arguing all the time. You're just sort of coming up with the same argument over and over again. We have this argument today. It's the same argument we had yesterday. It's the same argument you had last week, and you're not resolving it. Okay. And that's not fun for anybody. So if you're doing neither of these, I would say pick one first. Okay. I would probably lean towards date night, okay, we're going to do something fun. And then you start to develop and start getting to let's figure out a way to do conflict. So those are a couple of ideas that I just wanted you to start thinking about this year. And I will recommend that if you want more, that you can come to our website. On our blog section, we have a number of articles that you can refer to if you want to go a little more in depth. And if this has spurred at least some curiosity in you to think about, hey, maybe we need to have a discussion one-on-one, we would love to entertain that with you as well. So if you want to reach out to us, you can find us. All the information that you would need is on our website at weddingchaplain.com. So we'll put some links in the show notes at the end if there's anything else that you wanted to follow up with us about. But the main way is to go to that website. And if there's any way that we can help you, we would love to interact with you. So just remember, it is your wedding and your marriage. And then we're trying to work on both of those with you. And if there's any way that we can help you with that, we would love to. Take care.